Hello everybody, welcome back to the Art and Storytelling Guild. My name is Emma and today we're going to be talking about genres. So what is a genre? Well, a genre of your story is going to be its personality. It's going to be the overall theme and mood of it. The genre of your story is also going to kind of dictate the types of character arcs that are common and what kind of ending is going to be expected or not expected. There are a lot of different types of genres, but today we're going to be looking at a couple of the most common ones and what makes them unique. Most of the genres we're going to be looking at today are going to be for works of fiction, for things that aren't real or true. But there is another type of genre called nonfiction. And nonfiction is all about recording events that happened. This can come in the form of biographies about a certain historical figure. It can be in history books that record like an old battle or something. And it can be in school textbooks for things like biology or math or whatever. It can also be in the journals and personal accounts of people that lived through historical times. So the key feature of nonfiction works is that they're about things that are true. As soon as you introduce something that isn't true or something that you know not to be true, then it becomes fiction. Now, the first type of genre that we're going to look at is probably the most popular type and the most widely used type. And this is action, sci-fi, and fantasy works. And while these all may seem like very different types of stories, at their core, beyond all the flashy lights and spaceships and fairies, they really are the same type of story. They follow the same plot line, typically. And they all have one goal: to excite the reader and take them on a thrilling, magical journey. This kind of genre is very creative in that it has a lot of elements that are not in real life, that are completely made up. This can be in a new species of alien that nobody's ever seen before, or a new concept for how magic might work in a magical world. And even action-based stories that supposedly take place in the real world, there are still elements of it that are, if not impossible, at least very highly unlikely. And because these kinds of stories are so different from real life, it's very important to keep in mind when writing them what we talked about on our setting day, about world building and kind of explaining to the reader why what's happening really makes sense. So now let's talk about the comedy genre. And I've put this in as a genre, but that really is kind of a loose term when talking about this. Comedy is more of a theme that is very common among other genres. If you think of your story like a meal that you're cooking, comedy is like a flavor that you're adding, but a really, really common flavor that is easy to add, like salt or something. And even though it might not be a full genre, I've added this in as its own separate slide because it's very difficult to execute properly and make it seem natural. In writing, at least, you can't rely on funny sound effects, loud noises, very fast things happening to make your reader laugh. Instead, you have to rely on wordplay, irony, subverting your reader's expectations, doing something really unexpected to try and get a giggle out of them. And that's what makes comedy really interesting in written form, is because you can't rely on the visuals to do it for you. Now, the tragedy or drama genre is kind of like comedy in that it's a common theme within other genres and stories. However, unlike comedy, there are quite a few written works that are purely tragic or dramatic. And these works usually aim to get a very emotional response out of their viewers. And I don't mean just one emotion. A lot of times, these kinds of genres really hinge on the fact that you're going to experience a wide variety of emotions in a very short period of time. You can go from being happy to sad to angry or scared very, very quickly. And this is done by creating an emotional attachment between the viewer and the characters. You want to make characters that are really easy to like and really easy to hate. You want your reader to feel like they have known this character all their life and that they are really part of the story. Once you have gotten your reader attached to the characters, then you can start to throw curveballs at them. You can start introducing really surprising or suspenseful events that your reader doesn't know how the characters are going to make it out of it. And because situations that are unexpected or very difficult are common in this genre, fall arcs are also a very common feature. Characters are often put under a lot of stress, and that can make them do very unexpected or morally gray things. And because of this, these genres, when they are their own work and not just sprinkled out throughout other stories, they very seldom have a happy ending. At best, the ending will probably be maybe kind of neutral, where nothing's really changed. And at its worst, a lot of characters will end up either very sad or very, very hurt. Now, the final genre we'll talk about today is the horror genre, which is probably the most difficult to get right when you're writing. Much like comedy, as opposed to horror movies, in horror writing, you can't rely on jump scares, scary-looking monsters, or jump scares to try and scare your reader. Instead, you have to create a creepy atmosphere. The kind of fear you want your reader to feel is not something threatening, like physically threatening, like a monster that is going to eat you, but rather a very, very deep fear which comes from being afraid of something that may not actually be there. And like I said, this is a very confusing and difficult genre to do in writing, but one tip I can give you for writing this is that the key to creating like a creepy monster atmosphere or whatever you want is to either over-describe it or under-describe it. By over-describing something, you're overloading the reader with information so they don't know what they need to be paying attention to. When you over-describe something, the reader's going, okay, this has to be really, really important. So they're always waiting for something to jump out at them. But of course, this never happens because, as hilarious as it would be, you can't just write the word boo on a page and when they turn it, the reader jumps out of their seat. So you have to create suspense and creepiness out of it. Now, on the other hand, under-describing something also creeps a reader out. And this is because the reader feels like they don't have nearly enough information. It's kind of like the reading equivalent of being in a dark room. You can't see anything, so you don't know what's there. You're basically putting a blindfold on the reader and not giving them enough information about their literary surroundings. So now we've covered how to create different moods for your story in writing. But now let's talk about how you can take that same mood and put it in a visual art piece. Now, of course, I've talked in the past about when you're dealing with characters, you can use body language to kind of show a personality or mood in them in just the drawing. But you can also really effectively create a mood with color in your artwork. And to do this, we have to think a little bit about a thing called color psychology and color palettes. So it's been proven that different colors can invoke different moods in a viewer. And the really funny thing is, a couple of them inspire really different ones depending on who you ask. For example, the color red can inspire both anger, but also love in different contexts. Or green can imply either a nice natural setting or a very planty feel, but it can also be recognized as a very sick color. Other colors, though, are pretty universally recognized as just one mood. Orange is usually a very excited color, a very energetic color. Yellow is usually very happy, playful, childish. Blue is a very subdued color that's either calm or sad or very quiet. And then purple is usually recognized as a very royal or elegant kind of color. And you can use these elements and these colors to create a very specific mood in your artwork. Take these pictures, for example. All three of these pictures have the same line work, the same drawing. They're the same pictures of trees. The difference is that the two on the sides have different color palettes. And I want you guys to think about what the different moods each of the colored pictures inspire in you. And there's no right or wrong answer to this. But there is definitely a very sharp difference between the two colored pictures and the moods they have. So keeping that in mind, I want you guys to think about two things. First, I want you to think about what kind of genre your story is. Which of these does it fit most closely into? After that, I want you to try and think of a color palette for your story as a whole. What mood does it have? You can even choose different colors for different parts of the story. The beginning, middle, and climax of your story are probably going to have very different moods. Finally, I want you to choose one or more of your characters and try and come up with a color palette for them. What colors do you think represent them best? You don't have to choose one of the basic colors either. If you think that they're a very excited person, that would suit an orange, but also a very happy person, that would suit a yellow, you can mix the two and create kind of a yellow-orange if that fits them best. But for your story and each character you do, I want you to try to choose like 2 to 3 colors that you think suit them best. So with that, I'll see you guys back on the Hangout at 2:40, and I can't wait to see what you've come up with.